to the Wine Nirvana podcast. Wine reviews for the average wine drinker. No pretense, no snobbery, no numerical ratings. And here's our host, Stephen Hawk.
Seekers of wine, truth, and knowledge. Yes, Stephen Hawk here, your wine guru. Today I want to talk about some facts and foibles in the wine world. As you can imagine, something as ancient as wine is going to have accumulated plenty of those. These are just random ruminations, so here we go. Vintages. Excellent vintages are never worldwide and can even vary by region. This is because there is so much variability in climate and weather. So, for instance, a great vintage in Napa Valley won't necessarily be wonderful in France or Italy or anywhere else for that matter. There are simply too many climatic variables. And although I pay attention to vintages, I think they're rather too much is made of them, particularly with modern producers. They have all kinds of ways to assure consistent quality from one vintage to the next, and many producers strive for a consistent style. For instance, there's a wine from Paso Robles, California, called Estancia. They have a full line of varietals, but I have been drinking their Cabernet Sauvignon for 30 years. And you know what? Frankly, it tastes the same year in and year out, which is great because it's reliable and it's a great value proposition. Some of you may know about a man named Robert Parker. He started a newsletter basically in 1978 called The Wine Advocate, and he continued to write and edit that until May of 2019 when he retired. The Wine Advocate does go on, however, because being a fan of nepotism, as so many people are, he passed the operation down to his son, Robert Parker Jr. Robert Parker's influence on the wine industry simply cannot be overstated. Many winemakers from around the world have been quoted as saying that after Parker's influence was firmly established in the late 80s, they started making wines for him to enjoy specifically because his numerical point system was so highly coveted. A wine with a rating of, say, 91 points could fetch a premium of, say, 20% over a wine that received 89 points. And that's why I've never been a fan of numerical rating systems, because really, who even with the most subtle and sophisticated palate can really say, well, this wine is 93 points, but this one's 95 points. Frankly, I find it to be silly, but it happens all the time, and it's not just Parker and the Wine Advocate. Wine Spectator, many online sites, you'll find these numerical ratings all over the place, and I think they're misguided and misplaced. Another point, quality and quantity are always at odds. Modern winemakers have all kinds of sophisticated high-tech tools at their disposal to ensure quality in wine, which is a good thing, but they're always constrained by yield. So if a producer is going for a high yield to make as much wine as possible, that inevitably is going to lead to a lower quality of wine. Now, there is a balance, of course, but by and large, this is what makes better wines more expensive, because the yields are lower and there's just less of it to go around. There are some imperfections in wine that can be off-putting to people, but are not always an indication that the wine is flawed or damaged. For instance, don't be afraid of sediment in a bottle, especially in red wines that are over 3 years old. Now, if the wine is less than 3 years old, yes, it's a problem. The wine has probably been damaged by exposure to high heat. But otherwise, if you find a fine sand-like sediment in the bottom of the bottle, that should be okay. This indicates that the wine has been made naturally with minimal filtration, and it rarely occurs in white wines. Another evident flaw are small crystals, resemble little slivers of cut glass. These are tartrate precipitates, and they occur almost always in whites, especially those from Germany and France's Alsace region. These are generated when the wine has been exposed to temperatures of below 40 degrees Fahrenheit. They are completely harmless. They are absolutely tasteless. The only impact is cosmetic. They don't really affect the quality of the wine itself at all. Most consumers are put off by cloudiness in wine, and therefore producers will use two techniques broadly called fining and filtering. Fining is a way to remove microscopic protein particles in wine that do lead to cloudiness. And filtering is another clarification process to remove yeast and other microorganisms as well as sediment. And while some fining and filtering seems to be almost inevitable, it can be overdone, particularly in more high volume wine production. And quality producers really try to minimize both of these techniques because they often speak of the way the soul of the wine is lost because too much flavor is filtered out along with the impurities. If you are going to have more than a bottle or two of wine on hand at any one time, you definitely need to store that wine carefully. What you want is a location that is free of light, odor, and vibration, and with a temperature ideally of 55 degrees. Unfortunately, few of us have a basement in the chateau, which is where that temperature comes from. But the other criteria are easily met by storing wine in a basement or even a closet. And you definitely do not want your wine to be exposed to temperatures over 70 degrees because that's going to lead to trouble for sure. You should never, never, never buy a bottle of wine where the cork has been pushed up above the rim of the bottle into the foil. This is a sure sign of heat damage, and I can attest to this personally. About 15 years ago, there was a bottle of wine that got, 100 points that I decided I just had to have. So when I went to the liquor store, they had one left in the bin. And even though the cork was pushed, I pressed ahead and bought it for, I think it was like $65, maybe more. Big mistake. I mean, the wine was drinkable, but it certainly didn't have this spectacular character that I was hoping for. You should drink most wines young, and by this I mean within 2 to 5 years. Some time ago, I had decided to lay down wines for 10 years and drink them at 10 years past the vintage date, usually in the first week of the new year. And I did this for about 5 or 6 years, and it was an amusing enough experiment, but I finally abandoned it because I didn't feel that the wines had really improved all that much, and I was, tired of waiting to drink them. This is something that the French have known for a very long time and have followed. They rarely will cellar wines for any significant period of time. Cellaring it's fraught with the risk of disappointment rather than the possibility of success. And just like I was mentioning, if your wines become overheated or disturbed or exposed to light, they are not going to enjoy that. In Bordeaux, a region famous for wines that can age 20 or 30 years, you will not find those wines on restaurant wine lists because proprietors want to turn those over, reap the profits, and people just want to drink those wines when they're ready. And yes, in Paris, you will see some of these rare stratospheric wines on lists, but ask any Frenchman and he will tell you, those are for the rich tourists only. And it's not just France. Spain and Italy follow the drink wine young rule also. In Spain, the tradition is to bottle age for 3 or 4 years anyway. So once those wines are put on the market, they are ready to go. And of course, Italy makes the famous Barbaresco and Barolos, and they will age, but again, most Italians are going to drink their wines when they're young and fruity and lively. As far as I'm concerned, the word invest does not apply to wine buying. Yes, there are some famous bottles that will appreciate in value, but the circumstances for that are so rarefied, it's out of touch for all but the most well-heeled wine collectors. So even if you are buying a special occasion wine, my suggestion is don't consider that bottle as, well, I'm making an investment. No, you're buying a bottle of wine. Even if it is expensive for a special occasion and you're going to save it for a while, that's great. An anniversary, a special birthday. There's even a tradition in England that on a child's birth, a bottle of port will be given to the parents as a gift. And then that port is to be opened and consumed on the child's 21st birthday. I think that's kind of a fun tradition. But again, that's not an investment. That's just a nice ritual. Most wines are served at the wrong temperature. Most whites are served too cold, most reds too warm. Really, ideally, either one will be served between 55 and 65 degrees Fahrenheit. And when people talk about serving red wine at room temperature, what they're really referring to are those French chateaux with their thick stone walls where room temperature would be about 65 degrees. So there's nothing wrong with leaving a white on the counter for 20 or 30 minutes before you drink it after it comes out of the refrigerator and putting a red into the refrigerator for 20 or 30 minutes before you drink it. The aforementioned Robert Parker was an early cheerleader for Riedel glassware, and I have to say I am a fan myself. Riedel, R-I-E-D-E-L, is an Austrian glassblowing company that's been around for quite some time, and in the 1990s, the firm pioneered the idea of varietal-specific glasses. Now, certainly a generic tulip-shaped glass, 8 to 12 ounces, will be quite serviceable if you don't want to get into a whole glassware thing. But Riedel's research indicated that by altering the size of the bowl and the shape of the rim, that when you poured the wine into your mouth out of a glass, that wine could be directed to specific parts of your palate to enhance the flavor of the wine. And many wine reviewers have confirmed that this does make a difference, and I can say that it does as well. Riedel, because of their major success with this idea, Riedel now makes a full line of glassware, but their two primary lines are the Sommelier series. These are very beautiful, very delicate, very expensive hand-blown glasses, which are a delight to use, but really impractical for day-to-day. Their Venom line uses exactly the same size and shape of the glasses, but these are machine-made glasses, which are much more affordable. Regardless of what kind of glass you choose, you should only fill it about a quarter full. If you look at the bowl, where at the widest point, that should be the maximum fill level in any glass that you're likely to be using. Also, be sure to give your glass a quick rinse in cold water before you use it to remove any dust that might be lingering. When it comes to pairing wine with food, drink what you like. The standard rules are reds with meats, white with fish, and frankly, this is a reliable and useful rule of thumb. But don't be tied to it. For instance, Pinot Noir with salmon can be a great combination. You can pair simple wines with complex food. You can pair complex wines with simple foods. I'll tell you, I love a big, jammy Cabernet Sauvignon with a hamburger. Another common pairing is red wine with cheese, which is fine. I like that. But also consider having your cheeses with a Sauvignon Blanc. So, drink what you like. Once we can freely travel again, do consider drinking local. There is at least one winery in every single state of the Union. Of course, some, like California, have 8,000. But do seek out local producers. You can discover all kinds of things that you might not otherwise have been aware of. Wine in restaurants is way overpriced, and I won't get into that here because I have a whole other rant about that in another podcast, but it is an ongoing irritation for me, and it should be for you too. If you're ordering wine online through a wine club, or just because you don't want to go to the liquor store with the COVID, if possible, have those wines delivered in the spring or fall. And of course, once again, this is to avoid temperature extremes and the possibility of damage. And last but not least, I urge you to remember that wine is a beverage of pleasure, and I think this is too often a truth forgotten or ignored by wine snobs. So if you're going to be drinking wine, drink it for the pleasure it offers rather than snob appeal. All right. That's it for this episode. Thank you for joining me. I've got to go drink some more wine.
This has been Wine Nirvana. To learn more, visit us at www.winenirvana.com.
This is a production of Habanero